everyone, my name is Drew Cooper, and welcome to my review of Star Wars Battlefront, the 2004 version of the game. And I know things are kind of weird for Battlefront fans at the moment because EA's Battlefront 2 is getting a lot of flack and there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. But I decided to go back and look at this game and figure out what the new games are missing from these games and why they're so beloved by fans. I thought EA's 2015 Star Wars Battlefront game was a hollow shell of a game, what was admittedly fun for what it was, but the new Battlefront is just a complete mess no matter how you look at it. Whether you care about microtransactions or not, EA's entries into the franchise have failed to garner the same loyal fan base that the older games did. And that's why I'm looking back at this game and its sequel in a couple weeks. I'm mostly trying to figure out if all the praise that this game gets, especially compared to the new ones, is really warranted. Some of you might not even know that this game exists, but back in 2004, Pandemic and LucasArts teamed up to make a fantastic third-person shooter that set you in the middle of a Star Wars battlefield. A lot of people look at this game with rose-tinted glasses, but I'm here to look at it critically and ask 3 questions. Is it as good as I remember? How has it aged? And is it really just a better overall experience than the new Battlefront games? Right away, I just can't ignore how nostalgic this game is for me. I never played it online back in the day, but instead I played it for hours and hours by myself or with a friend offline. We'd try to exploit the game and get as many kills and endgame rewards as possible. We'd try to find tricky ways to get around each map as fast as we could. We'd even roleplay every now and then as generals trying to control the tide of battle. And the game allowed us to do all of these things. Pandemic's first Battlefront really made you feel like you were taking part in an epic battle. Everyone started with the same choices of weapons with a totally even playing field. With the exception of the droidicas, seriously fuck those guys. Each game unfolded in a unique way thanks to its distinct AI and its well-designed maps with choke points and wide open battlefields. Just looking at a map in a Battlefront mid-game shows exactly what I'm talking about. It gives you a real-time look at the constantly transforming battlefield, giving you a glimpse into how much you're destroying the other team or getting annihilated yourself. The game beautifully captures that feeling of being a single insignificant grunt soldier on the battlefield, while not also making your efforts feel completely meaningless. Yes, you're on an even playing field with every other character in the game besides heroes, but you can still single-handedly destroy a team or even pull a victory out of just out-surviving your opponent. It's a great feeling when you're one of only 2 people left on your team and you manage to claw your way back from a 2v14 lead, like I did on this mission on Hoth. The game also has a full campaign mode where you go through some of the most memorable battles from the movies. There are 2 campaigns, one for the Clone Wars and one for the Galactic Civil War. You'll spend half of each campaign playing on the dark side and the other half playing on the light. These campaigns will take you only a couple of hours to get through in total, especially if you're playing on medium difficulty. But it is fun seeing some of these conflicts from different sides. And for the record, I just love that the game starts with letting you pummel Gungans into the ground as a trade federation. It's not exactly canon, but it's great stress relief. There's also a Galactic Conquest mode that lets you fight an opponent across multiple planets. You're tasked with conquering these planets, and when you do, you're given certain bonuses. You continue to defeat your opponent until you make it to their homeworld and destroy them for good. Each campaign in this mode takes about an hour, and considering there are 8 campaigns, it could take you a good length of time to get through them. Though, to be honest, it would be a little repetitive considering they all take place on almost the same maps with the same bonuses. Even so, whether you're playing the game's campaign, Galactic Conquest, or even just instant action, going back and playing this game as an old fan is like a huge nostalgia bomb to all of the senses. But when all the nostalgia subsides, is there anything left to this game? When we remove the rose-tinted glasses and look at the game with a critical eye, will we still have the same experience? Well, even though this game is way more of a mixed bag than I remember, I'm happy to report that it is still a really fun game. It has some problems, a lot of which we'll touch on, but one thing I wanted to point out is that the reason this game is so well remembered and beloved by gamers all over is because the basic design principles of the game are incredibly solid. At its core, the game is fun, and you can lose hours playing skirmishes to your heart's content. But once you extend out from that fun core, you do start to notice some cracks that may sour the experience a little bit. Earlier I mentioned that the AI in the game is distinct, and that's mostly because they at least know how to walk towards the objective in most scenarios. Other than that though, the AI is completely atrocious. Occasionally they might surprise you by capturing a point across the map or destroying an enemy vehicle or hero. But most of the time they stand completely out in the open, funnel into choke points, and even walk straight away from capture points. You can't issue out commands to make certain allies follow you, but their overall intelligence just makes the entire experience pretty frustrating. The Battle of Endor was incredibly frustrating for me for this reason. My team absolutely refused to push any of the points and were continually mowed down by stormtroopers and ATSTs, leaving me to complete the objective all by myself, which was impossible to do because I didn't have enough damage alone. Eventually, I just had to man-mode the crap out of this mission and just out-survive the enemy team, but that was no thanks to my completely brain-dead teammates. With that said though, this is one of the easiest Star Wars games ever made, even with its highest difficulty, which is both a plus and a minus. It's great because it makes you feel superior to all your enemies, stopping the feeling of uselessness I was talking about earlier. But on the other hand, it's pretty easy for you and you alone to completely sweep the other team with very few deaths. All of this is due to the game's incredibly generous aim assist on consoles. The game plays almost like a flight simulator, where the game actively drags your crosshair around to accommodate for projectile travel time. This makes it incredibly difficult to miss your enemies, and makes any choice of weapon other than the standard blaster rifle the wrong choice. Sure, you can use a sniper rifle if you want, or a shotgun type weapon, or even a rocket launcher if you're feeling really special, but in every scenario you almost always come out on top with the standard weapon. And that brings about a discussion on balance. Yeah, this game doesn't really have any. Apart from the pretty balanced class choices in the game, like I said, you can single-handedly win each battle on your own thanks to your perfect aim and superior tactical intelligence. Each game rarely ends closely, with one team more than likely being stomped into the ground. You'll occasionally see close games, but only when there are extra variables thrown into the mix like specific objectives or heroes. Heroes are so ridiculously overpowered in this game. For one, I don't think I've ever seen one die unless it was thrown off a map. They can deflect projectiles from almost any direction, and their AI makes them basically unstoppable, even by you the player. It's just too damn hard to do damage to these guys, requiring you to use grenades, rockets, or even vehicles to get any sort of damage in. And while that's cool and understandable for the power fantasy aspect and all, you can't even play as these iconic characters. Yeah, that's right, you couldn't play as heroes in the original Battlefront game. Maybe I'm wrong or just unlucky, but I never got the opportunity to play as heroes in my many hours with the game. They are always controlled by AI, and while it's cool to fight by their side at times, you never get to experience what it's like to be the hero on the battlefield. Well, at least not in the way you're expecting. All of these issues wouldn't be as much of a problem if you could still play this game online these days. The battles will be less predictable and more chaotic, you'd be going against way smarter opponents, and in general it would be just fun knowing that I was going against an actual team of players instead of a bunch of robots. But since Microsoft shut off all servers for the OG Xbox Live, it just isn't going to happen, at least not for me. I've heard some people have success getting the PS2 version to work online, and especially the PC version, but the Xbox is completely out of luck here. Speaking of the PC version, it was kind of weird for me because I couldn't get it to stream in a 16:9 aspect ratio, though when I was playing the game it was fine, so that shouldn't be a problem for you guys. One thing I did immediately notice, however, is the fact that the PC version lacks any sort of aim assist in any way. That may be obvious, but holy crap does that make a huge difference towards the game's difficulty. You'll die a lot more on the PC version because of this, which may be a good thing to some. I, however, like the overpowered feeling the console version gives me, to be honest, so I'll just stick to that. Also, the PC version is only really available one of two ways, and if you're the kind of person who doesn't like to pirate games, you're not going to like your options. Only physical copies of the game are produced, meaning the game isn't available for purchase online anywhere unless you buy the physical disc. This means that the only other option for getting your hands on this is through illegitimate means, like I had to, because, come on, I don't even know if my PC has a working disk drive these days. Thankfully, finding these copies online isn't difficult at all, and there are tons of sites to choose from. I found a legit source, which I've linked in the description, but as always you should use serious caution when getting games like this online. I just wish a site like GOG would step in and try to make this game more accessible again, but it seems like EA doesn't really care about it anymore. Considering it's so easy to find a digital copy, I feel like EA is just letting it happen at this point, which is odd considering many consider this game to be far superior to either of their offerings. Which brings me to my last question, is this game really better than the new Battlefront games, particularly Battlefront from 2015? Many gamers complain that EA missed out on a huge opportunity to just revamp the old gameplay style from the old games and bring it to a new generation. But is that really a good idea? I mean, would that have translated to a better experience overall? First of all, the number one complaint I hear about the 2015 Battlefront is that it didn't have enough content. There was no campaign mode and barely any sort of meaningful single-player offering. It launched with only 4 large conquest-style maps and 9 smaller deathmatch maps, compared to the 2004 Battlefront 17 total maps, all of which were playable in Conquest mode. The game also didn't have the signature class system that the franchise was known for, though this isn't as much of a big deal as people made it out to be, more on that later. The game featured completely player-controlled matches with 0 bots, which some players saw as a negative because it made battles feel smaller and less grandiose. People also didn't like the fact that the new Battlefront didn't have any sort of galactic conquest mode, instant action mode, or even a way to play some of the battles from the prequel films. For me, I had a lot of fun with the 2015 Battlefront, but not nearly as much as the older versions. But when I start to make comparisons of the games, it's hard to pinpoint exactly why. It's not a black and white comparison, one isn't just distinctly better than the other. For starters, I like the amount of customization the new Battlefront has compared to the old. The 2004 Battlefront's choices of infantry were very bland and with very little variety thrown into the mix. The new Battlefront, though, allowed you to tailor your specific loadout to your liking, which helped a lot with throwing other weapons into the mix. Also, being able to actually play as heroes, even though it's all luck-based and incredibly inconsistent, is greatly appreciated. And just by its nature, Battlefront 2015 is way more balanced and challenging than its predecessor, which is something that I like. But with all of those things, why do I still not have as much fun with the new game as I did with the old, even today? Well, I think it comes down to the fact that each game is fundamentally different at their core. Battlefront 2015 is meant to be a multiplayer-focused shooter that lets you live out your fantasies of being in the Star Wars universe, whether that's as a soldier or a hero. Battlefront 2004, as we talked about before, is all about the grunt experience. You aren't given special treatment or the ability to customize your character because you're nothing more than a soldier, a number on the battlefield. The new Battlefront games are all about your personal gain, focusing on your specific progression. The old Battlefront games are focused on controlling points to win the game. In other words, the new Battlefronts focus on the battles, but the old ones focus on the war. Your individuality didn't really matter in the old games, and the real challenge was trying to sway your teammates towards a victory by moving the front line of war across the map. The new games instead focus on your own personal victories and how you grow as a player, which is fine for some, but for me it just misses the mark and point of the franchise entirely. So while they have prettier graphics, tighter controls, and more variety, the new games can't even compare to the old ones because they're fundamentally just less fun for me. So is one better than the other? That's incredibly subjective to what you like. But if you're like me and prefer feeling like you're in the middle of an epic battle rather than just boosting your KD up a fraction of a point, then you may want to seek out a copy of 2004's Battlefront. It'll give you a chance to try something that really hasn't been done since and to hear all the hubbub about why people are so disappointed with these new additions. It's unfortunate that it's so hard to get your hands on a copy of this game these days. It's one of the best Star Wars games ever made, up there with KOTOR and Republic Commando. Also, Battlefront 2004 comes with a demo for Republic Commando, so I mean that just explains it itself. And while it sucks that the new games haven't really reached the same bar of quality, at least players like me who played this as a kid can still remember those days of living on the battlefield as these soldiers. We can still enjoy the memories of playing the real Battlefront, and I think that says a lot. This game focused on one thing, making sure it was fun, which is nice to go back to when you play games that have seemingly endless and pointless progression systems, that are overstuffed with DLC and extra content that you have to download, and they just never feel finished, and at their core they're just not that fun to play. I'd rather play a game that is fun first and has all these extra perks rather than a game that is a chore first and then fun maybe second. And Battlefront 2004 is definitely one of those games. It is fun at its core and it's just an overall incredible experience. And that's my review of Star Wars Battlefront from 2004. Overall, even though there's a few blemishes here and there, it's still a really fun game to get into today. It's definitely worth checking out if you can find a console copy, and the PC version's basically free to anybody, so I mean, I'd recommend that version too. I'd like to give a shout out to Justin Ferrante, who suggested this review, and he also suggested reviewing the second game, which we're going to be doing in a couple weeks. I'm trying to get my hands on a copy. I might just do the PC version. I like to do the original Xbox versions of these games to kind of see how they were. It's like opening a time capsule because those games weren't really updated that often, so you get to see how the game was back in that day. But yeah, thanks Justin for suggesting this review, and if you want to suggest a review in the future, go ahead and leave a suggestion down in the comments below. If I get enough suggestions for this particular game, I'll try to get my hands on it and review it. But yeah, in a couple weeks I'm planning on reviewing Battlefront 2 from Pandemic, which has a lot more features and support for the PC version. It's actually available on Steam, so I'm actually more excited to get into that and see how that plays and how that's different. For now though, thanks for watching this video and checking out my channel. I really hope to see you guys next time. Bye.